Welcome to Bedtime English Buddies. Tonight we're excited to share the story of the second chance. Chapter 1. A Wish in the Night. Michael Turner, a 45-year-old man, lived in a quiet town where he ran a small bookshop filled with dusty novels and forgotten stories. The shop had its charm, but Michael often felt stuck in his life. He reflected on his past decisions and wished he could go back and change them. Each day followed a predictable routine: wake up, open the shop, chat with a few customers and close it again by sundown. Every evening, he'd sit in the dim back room, surrounded by piles of books, longing for the dreams he once had. One rainy evening, as Michael sat in his shop, listening to the rhythmic tap of raindrops on the windows, he sighed, holding a cup of tea that did little to warm his spirit. "If only I could go back and do things differently," he murmured. It wasn't the first time he had thought this, but tonight felt different. Leaning back in his chair, Michael closed his eyes. Suddenly, a soft glow filled the room. Startled, he opened his eyes to find a mysterious figure standing before him. The figure's cloak shimmered like starlight, and its voice was soft like the wind. "Michael Turner," the figure said, "your wish has been heard. Would you like to go back to the age of 16 and rewrite your story?" His heart raced. "Is this real? Or am I dreaming?" "This is real," the figure replied. "But remember, every choice you make will shape your future. Are you ready?" Michael hesitated only a moment. Undoing his regrets was too tempting. "I'm ready." With a wave of the figure's hand, golden light enveloped Michael, and he felt as if he were floating through time. When he opened his eyes again, he was standing in his old bedroom, posters of rock bands on the walls, stacks of cassette tapes on the floor, and the reflection of his 16-year-old self in the mirror. His messy hair, thin frame, and hopeful eyes stared back at him. "This is incredible," he whispered. "I'm young again." Chapter 2. Back to high school. Michael took a moment to absorb the sight of his teenage self. His old room looked exactly the same: creaky floorboards, the faint smell of his mother's cooking drifting upstairs. He heard her call, "Michael, you'll be late for school." He grabbed his backpack and ran downstairs. His mother was there, younger, her hair darker, and her face free of the lines time had etched in his original timeline. She smiled warmly at him. "Don't forget your lunch," she said, handing him a brown paper bag. Michael's throat tightened. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen her this way in his original life. At school, everything felt both familiar and strange. The hallways buzzed with chatter, lockers slammed shut, and teachers' voices echoed. Michael spotted his old friends, Lisa and David, standing by their lockers. A mix of nostalgia and regret flooded his chest. In his original life, he had let his friendship with them fade away. This time, he vowed things would be different. "Michael," Lisa called, waving. She was just as he remembered, bright-eyed, with a smile that could light up a room. "Hey," he said, trying to act casual. David nudged him. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just thinking about the science fair," Michael blurted, seizing the opportunity. In his original timeline, he had ignored the project, seeing it as a waste of time. But now, he saw it as a chance to make better choices. "The science fair?" Lisa raised an eyebrow. "You're actually interested in that?" Michael nodded. "Yeah, I thought we could work on something together. What do you think?" Lisa exchanged a surprised glance with David. "Sure," she said. "Let's do it." Chapter 3. New Choices. Michael threw himself into the science project with Lisa and David. They decided to build a wind-powered generator, something Michael remembered being interested in later in life. As they worked together, Michael found their friendship growing stronger. He realized how much he had taken it for granted the first time around. "You're really into this, aren't you?" Lisa asked one afternoon as they worked in the school library. Michael shrugged. "I guess I'm just trying to make the most of things." David grinned. "Well, it's nice to see you actually care about something for once." Things weren't always easy. Michael faced self-doubt and struggled to get things right. School bullies also made life difficult, targeting anyone who stood out. But this time, Michael was determined to stand his ground. One day, Lisa asked Michael, "What's gotten into you? You're so different now." Michael hesitated. He couldn't tell her the truth. So he said, "I just realized that life's too short to waste." Lisa smiled. "Well, I like the new you." Chapter 4. Standing Up. One afternoon, Michael witnessed a younger student, Tommy, being bullied. In his original timeline, he had walked away, not wanting to get involved. This time, however, something stirred within him. He remembered the helplessness he had felt as a teen, and wished someone had stood up for him. This was his chance to be the person he needed back then. His heart pounded as he stepped between Tommy and the bullies. His palms were sweaty, but he held his ground. "Hey, leave him alone," he shouted. The biggest bully, a tall boy with a smug grin, sneered. "What you gonna do about it?" he taunted. Michael didn't flinch. "If you don't back off, I'll report you to the principal." The bullies exchanged uneasy glances and walked away. Tommy looked up at Michael wide-eyed with gratitude. "Thank you," Tommy said softly. "No one's ever stood up for me before." Michael smiled and placed a reassuring hand on Tommy's shoulder. "You're not alone, Tommy. Sometimes all it takes is standing up for what's right." The act left a lasting impact on Michael. As he walked away, he felt a surge of pride and purpose. It was a small act, but it symbolized a larger change in him, a commitment to making a difference no matter how small. The experience inspired other students to speak out against bullying, and Michael felt like he was helping to shape a better world, one choice at a time. Chapter 5. The Big Day. The day of the science fair arrived, and excitement buzzed in the air. Students and teachers wandered through the gym, admiring the various projects on display. Michael, Lisa, and David were among the first to set up their wind-powered generator model. Each of them had a role to play. Michael prepared a speech, Lisa worked on visual aids, and David made final adjustments to the model. Their teamwork was flawless. When the judges arrived, Michael felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Mr. Graves, the stern science teacher, was among them. As the judges examined their project, Michael explained how their wind-powered generator worked, describing the process of converting wind energy into electricity. Lisa demonstrated the generator in action, and David made sure everything functioned smoothly. The judges asked detailed questions about the project's challenges and successes. Michael answered honestly, detailing the trial and error process and how they overcame obstacles through teamwork and persistence. By the end of the presentation, the judges were clearly impressed. When the winners were announced, the gymnasium grew silent. The first place award goes to Michael, Lisa, and David for their wind-powered generator. Cheers erupted as the trio hugged, their faces glowing with joy. As they stepped onto the stage to accept their trophy, Michael felt a wave of pride and accomplishment. This was a moment he had never experienced in his original timeline, and it reaffirmed his belief that effort and determination could change the course of one's life. Chapter 6. Lessons Learned. Months passed, and Michael continued to make thoughtful choices. He focused on strengthening his relationships, excelling in school, and building a positive reputation among his peers. Inspired by the science fair, he joined the school's environmental club and spearheaded a tree planting project around the schoolyard, rallying students and teachers to contribute. His teachers noticed the change. "Michael, you've really turned things around," his history teacher said after class one day. "You've become a role model for others." Michael smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "Thank you. I'm just trying to make the most of every opportunity." At home, his relationship with his parents blossomed. He started helping his mother in the kitchen and discussing future plans with his father. "I think I want to pursue a career in renewable energy," he told them one evening. His parents exchanged proud glances and offered their support. His impact wasn't limited to academics and family. Michael began mentoring younger students, including Tommy, the boy he had defended from bullies. Tommy often sought Michael's advice, and Michael took time to guide him through his struggles. "You've got a bright future ahead of you," Michael told Tommy one day, handing him a book on self-confidence. "Thanks, Michael," Tommy said, his eyes shining. "You've really helped me believe in myself." Each choice Michael made created a ripple effect. He organized study groups, volunteered at the local library, and gradually became someone others looked up to. He realized that his new approach to life wasn't just about fixing his own mistakes. It was about making a meaningful impact on those around him. He mended his relationship with his family, worked hard in school, and stayed close to Lisa and David. He understood now that happiness didn't come from avoiding mistakes, but from learning and growing. Chapter 7. A Better Tomorrow. The days after the science fair passed in a blur of success and new experiences for Michael. He continued to excel in his studies, making his parents proud and strengthening his relationships with friends and teachers. His life, which once felt monotonous and stagnant, had transformed into something full of promise. His choices, once shaped by fear and indecision, were now guided by a sense of purpose. Michael felt proud of how far he had come. One evening, as Michael sat in his room studying for an upcoming exam, he felt a familiar presence. The soft glow filled the room once again, and the mysterious figure appeared before him. This time, however, Michael didn't feel fear or confusion. Instead, he felt a deep sense of peace, as though everything had fallen into place. "You've done well, Michael," the figure said, its voice like a gentle breeze. "Your time here has come to an end. You will soon return to the life you left behind." Michael's heart skipped a beat. "I've learned so much, but I don't want to go back. This life, this version of me feels right. I don't want to lose it." The figure nodded knowingly. "You have grown, Michael, but the life you've lived here will stay with you. The lessons you've learned will shape your future. This version of you is not just a fleeting dream. It's now a part of who you are, the person you will become." Michael swallowed, feeling a lump in his throat. "So, I won't lose everything?" "No," the figure said softly. "You will carry these lessons with you. The wisdom you've gained here will guide you in your own world, in your own time." Before Michael could respond, the figure's hand extended toward him. A warm light enveloped him once again, and he felt his surroundings begin to blur and fade. His heart raced, but this time, there was no fear. Instead, he felt an overwhelming sense of hope and excitement for the future, ready to take on whatever came next. Chapter 8. Old Friends, New Beginnings. When Michael awoke, he found himself lying on the familiar couch in his small bookshop. The smell of old pages and the sound of the wind rustling through the trees outside brought him a sense of comfort. He rubbed his eyes and sat up slowly, the feeling of the golden light from the mysterious figure still fresh in his mind. He stood up, feeling different somehow. The weight of his regrets seemed lighter, as though they had been lifted. He looked around his bookshop, which, while still modest, now seemed brighter. The shelves were filled with more books, and there was a sense of warmth in the air, like the shop had been rejuvenated. But it wasn't just the shop that had changed. Michael felt an inner peace he had never experienced before. The choices he had made, the paths he had taken were no longer a source of anxiety. Instead, they were lessons that had shaped him into the man he had always wanted to become. The most striking difference, however, was the photograph on the wall. It showed Michael, Lisa, David, and even Tommy, smiling together. It was a snapshot from a time after the science fair, after they had all made a commitment to stay in touch, to be there for each other. It was a sign that Michael's decisions had created a ripple effect, not only changing his life, but the lives of those around him. As Michael took in the photo, his heart swelled with gratitude. He had made things right with his friends, rekindled the bonds that had once been lost. He had rekindled the relationships that had shaped his youth, and had now become the foundation for his future. Maybe this is where I'm meant to be, Michael whispered to himself. He smiled, realizing that the journey was far from over. He had a new life ahead of him, but he was no longer afraid of it. He was ready to live it with intention, to embrace the changes he had made, and continue to build the future he had always dreamed of. Chapter 9. Rebuilding the bookshop. The days following Michael's return to his 45-year-old self were filled with small but significant changes. He approached his bookshop with a renewed sense of purpose. The quiet little shop, which had once felt like a place of solitude, began to transform into a lively community hub. Michael hosted book readings for children, bringing local authors in to inspire young minds. The shop, which had been a quiet retreat, became a gathering place for people of all ages who shared a love of literature. He also introduced creative writing workshops for teenagers, offering them a space to express themselves and explore their potential. The first session was a bit awkward, but as the weeks passed, the room filled with eager young faces, each with their own stories to tell. Michael encouraged them to write about their dreams, their fears, and their ambitions. Through these workshops, he not only helped others find their voices, but also rediscovered his own passion for storytelling. Michael's newfound purpose wasn't just about running a bookshop, it was about creating a space where others could learn, grow, and connect. He collaborated with local schools, inviting students to take part in writing contests and donating books to libraries in need. The once quiet town now had a place where young minds could come to escape into the world of books and imagination. One afternoon, as Michael was reorganizing the shelves, the bell on the door rang. He looked up and saw a familiar face. Tommy, the young boy he had stood up for all those years ago. Tommy was now older, and his posture was confident, a sharp contrast to the shy, bullied teenager Michael had once known. "Mr. Turner?" Tommy asked, looking around the shop. "I heard you run these writing workshops. I was hoping I could join." Michael's heart swelled with pride. "Of course, Tommy. You're always welcome here." Tommy smiled, a genuine wide smile that spoke of his newfound confidence. "Thanks, Mr. Turner. I've started writing too. Maybe one day I'll be an author." Michael smiled back, realizing that the ripple effect of his actions had not only changed his life, but had helped transform Tommy's as well. Chapter 10. The journey continues. As the years passed, Michael continued to pour his heart into his bookshop, which became more than just a place for books. It became a space for community, growth, and healing. His mentorship program for teenagers took off, and he began to have a profound impact on the lives of young people in his town. Many of his mentees reminded him of his younger self, unsure, searching for purpose, and struggling to make sense of the world. Michael took great care in guiding them, sharing his own experiences and the lessons he had learned over the years. He encouraged them to pursue their passions, to embrace failure as a part of growth, and to never stop learning. His advice was simple but powerful. The key to a fulfilling life is making choices that align with your values. Don't wait for life to happen to you. Make it happen. One of his proudest moments came when one of his mentees, Sarah, published her first book. She had been a quiet, introverted student when she first joined his program, unsure of her talents. But under Michael's guidance, she found her voice and shared her stories with the world. When Michael received a copy of her book in the mail, he couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. He had helped guide Sarah to discover her passion, just as he had once discovered his. As time went on, Michael's life began to take on a new rhythm. He no longer felt the weight of regret or missed opportunities. Instead, he felt a sense of peace, knowing that the life he was living was the one he had always wanted. His work at the bookshop, his mentorship, and his community outreach all gave him a sense of purpose, and as he looked out at the faces of the people whose lives he had touched, he knew that he had found his true calling. Chapter 11. A Life Well Lived. On his 65th birthday, Michael stood in the middle of his bookshop, surrounded by friends, family and former mentees. The shop was filled with laughter and joy, as everyone gathered to celebrate his life and the impact he had made on the community. Lisa, David, and their families were there, as well as Tommy, who had become a successful author. He was now standing on the stage, giving a heartfelt speech about how Michael had changed his life. "Mr. Turner," Tommy began, his voice filled with emotion, "you were there for me when no one else was. You taught me to believe in myself, and because of that, I've written my own book. I owe so much of who I am today to you." Michael smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had never imagined that his small actions, helping a young boy, guiding his students, or simply being there, would have such a profound impact on others. He had made mistakes in the past, but he had worked hard to correct them. Now he stood surrounded by the people whose lives he had touched, and he knew he had made a difference. As the night wore on, Michael looked around at the people who had come to celebrate him, and he realized that the true measure of a life well lived wasn't in grand achievements or accolades. It was in the relationships we build, the lives we touch, and the way we choose to leave a lasting legacy. He had built a life of meaning, surrounded by love, friendship, and purpose. With a contented smile, Michael looked out the window at the night sky. The stars twinkled above, and he knew that his journey was far from over. As long as he continued to live with intention, to guide others, and to learn from his past, he would keep growing, keep giving, and keep living a life well lived. This is the end of the story. Good night.